In this video, I'm going to show you 5 techniques for using EQ and also 5 kind of like situations of when you would use it. And when starting out, like obviously EQ is and compression are both those kind of things which at first they're kind of like difficult to wrap your head around. And the questions that I used to ask myself is like, why do I need to use an EQ? And I'd be putting it on and playing around with it and not really knowing why I'm doing it. So I'm going to try and kind of clear some of that up today, and while we're doing this, we're going to be using FabFilter's Pro Q2 on the master channel. And the reason why I've got this set up is because for some guys, we might not be in top studios, we might not have the best kind of listening environments, so there's no shame in using a visual aid to help you mix. Now, I know a lot of people might comment and say, oh, you should always use your ears, which is very, very true. But in some cases, I do this all the time, I've always got visual aids on my master channel, and Pro Q2 is one of them. And the reason why I use Pro Q2 is because instead of the graph being shown like this in a diagonal, which is the way that we kind of perceive audio, so that's actually the true representation of it. On the Pro Q2, they've kind of switched it around so it kind of represents the Munson curve. And the reason why I like that is because I can then visually mix to the line using my ears as well, but kind of use it as an aid, so I can look at it and go, what am I missing in my mix? Or I can see I've got a dip at 200 hertz, or when trying to balance a sound, or I can see straight away that there's a big dip from 200 hertz down where the bass is kind of lacking that low end, or there's like a massive boost on my hats. You know, there's things like that where you can just open up the Pro Q2 and see it straight away, which I think is really invaluable. And these things sometimes go past even the best ears, I believe. Like, I think using a visual representation, especially in a room where you've not got the best listening gear or kind of environment, is such a great idea, and you should definitely give that a go. So yeah, we're going to be using this today so I can help the guys that are using headphones or laptop speakers or whatever it is, whatever environment you're listening, you can still get the benefits of the tutorial. So this first technique that I'm going to show you is when you've got a sound and you want to use EQ to improve the tonal balance of the sound. So for this, I'm using a pad sound from the Sub-Zero pack, which is EQ'd already, sounds great. But because it's a pad sound, I've seen that there's a little bit of carving going on in the bass area to allow the bass to sit in. But we're going to kind of boost that and use the pad sound for both the pad and the bass. So when I press play, you'll see the visual representation here, and you'll notice that there's a dip below 200 hertz area. So you can see that all that kind of top area is quite nicely balanced. At the beginning it went down a little bit, but that's because of the filter from the Moog. So yeah, what I want to do is I want to make this into the bass sound as well, just by boosting below 200 hertz. And I'm just going to use Ableton's EQ8, and I've set up a low shelf here, which is acting at 147 hertz. We might boost that a little bit higher actually. And I'm just going to boost the gain, and you can see what it's doing on the graph as well. So there you go, we've kind of boosted that bass area to make it into a bass sound as well as the pad sound. And the other thing to say about this is that you don't have to do a low shelf boost. You can do a high shelf cut, for instance, and then boost the overall gain. But I find with shelves you can boost and you can get away with it quite easily. They always say cut, but with this I feel like I can just boost the shelves and it's fine. And let's move on to the next one. So the next example I want to show you is when you've got sounds like, for instance, hats, where there might be some peaky kind of frequencies where they're kind of popping out a bit too much, and they might hurt your ears if they're in the 2K to like kind of 7K area. Quite resonant frequencies, not just in hats, but in any sound. Or there might be a frequency that you just want to get rid of. Maybe it's not working tonally in the mix and things like that. Again, we're using a loop out the Aurora pack, which is mixed anyway perfectly. I think. But with this sound, I found that the part of the hats It's got some peaky resonant bits which actually add to the sound anyway, but we're going to use it as an example, and I'm going to show you how you would notch out those areas. So let's bring up the visualizer again, and we'll just press play on this. So we're going to be focusing on like kind of those 3 peaks there. And when you get like raw drum sound, so if you record a drummer in a room, you'll get like room resonances and microphone resonances and things like that. So with live drums, you will definitely have to do a bit of this. So yeah, let's go ahead. I'll show you how you would go about this in a couple of different ways. So the first way is to use like Ableton's EQ, or here I'm using the DMG Audio EQ. I just really prefer using this. And so what you do is you do a little boost. Let's just open up the cue a bit, and you sweep through the frequencies. So you get to a point where it kind of pops out and it's kind of nasty sounding. So let's just do that. So I'd say that one there. And then once you found the offending frequency, narrow the EQ. If you're doing a cut, always do a narrow EQ. If it's a boost, do a wide one. So yeah, we're going to bring that down now. So you just find an area where you feel like it's more balanced. And don't make the mistake that I always made for years, which is to, when you find the offending frequency, you just cut it straight out. Like you just go minus, wherever this is, minus 18 dB. And sometimes keep piling them on so you can completely eradicate that frequency. Don't do that, because you're just going to end up with like comb filtering, unless that's what you're after. But yeah, you just want to do it subtly and just bring it down like a few dB at the most, really. I mean, sometimes you might find that you've got a frequency that you really do just want to get out of the mix, and you can bring it down that much. But with this, I like to be subtle with it and keep some of that original frequency in, because it actually does add to the tonality of the hats. And we're just going to do it again and see if there's any more frequencies. So I'd say that one there as well. Let's do before and after. So if you're listening on monitors or headphones, you probably hear that when we switch between before and after, it really does pop out now. And that's another thing as well to be careful of, because when you're doing this, your ears get so accustomed to that tone that you kind of pick it up really easily. You can really pinpoint it, and that means that you will end up pulling it down loads, and you've got to be careful of that. You've got to be really mindful of it. So yeah, that's one way of doing it, using like Ableton's EQ or this EQ or any other EQ that you've got. And again, Pro Q2 is really handy for this, because you've got this little feature here where if you hover the mouse over the frequency spectrum, it kind of freezes it, and then you can go in and visually pull down the notches. So I'll just show you how this works now. It's a little bit cheaty again, but I don't know, that's what tools are there for. Like if something helps you achieve it faster, then use it. Don't listen to people that say, oh, you shouldn't be doing it by your eyes, you should always do it by your ears. You can do that, but again, like you can visually just kind of level it out to start with to get to a good point with it, and then you can nudge these gains back up to try and find a nice balance, or play with a cue as well. So yeah, that's my next tip, which is really, really useful, and I found myself doing that with a lot of sounds. So in this next example, I'm going to show you how we can use EQ to carve space in 2 different sounds to make them fit together in the mix a little bit better. And for this example, we've got these 2 loops here. I'll just play them separately. So I mean, they fit pretty nicely anyway, but we're just going to carve a little bit more space in each of them. So what I've done is I brought up 2 EQs and we've turned the analyzer on. So the left one is this sound. And the right one is that other bass sound. And And as you can see just by looking on the frequency graphs, around 200 hertz, there's a lot of energy going on in both of them. And I really want the bass to kind of pop through on that. So if I was going to choose which one I want to shine in the 200 hertz area, I'd choose the bass every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of points on the EQ. So here I've got an EQ node set at 260 on the left one and also 260 on the right one. And the trick is to boost one and lower the other. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the left one by maybe 2 dB, 3 dB. I'll go quite extreme just for the example, so we'll do 3B and 260 on this one. We'll boost that by 3 dB. And another part of the trick is that you go further up the EQ and you make a cut on the right one and a boost on the left one. So you make one of the sound that is being cut in the bass end, you make it shine in the top end and you lower the bass sound. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, I've set up another node at 1 kilohertz. 1K. So we're going to boost it by 3 dB on this one and we're going to bring it down by 3 dB on this one. So let's just have a quick listen to what we've done there, see what that sounds like. So let's do a quick A/B. So this is before. And this is after we've applied the EQ. So it is quite subtle effects, but I do feel like the second version is much cleaner. And obviously, if you've got two sounds that are competing quite heavily within a mix, then this is a great tool to use. Just get two EQs and carry out this technique. And also, I will say one thing on choosing which frequencies to boost and which ones to cut. I usually just do it by ear, so I find out where the fundamental kind of energy is in each of the sounds. Obviously, bass sound, it's going to be between 100 and 500 hertz area. And the other sound, because it's like an arpeggiated sound, it's obviously going to be sitting more in the mids and the tops. So you can choose quite strategically that way. Sometimes you're working with two kind of like bassy sounds, and you'll have to be a little bit more inventive of where you put the cuts and the boosts. And again, just do it by ear. Just find out where you want to boost and cut the other ones. And it does take a bit of trial and error and getting used to. And the next one we're going to look at is when you use EQ to boost and color a sound. So we've got this sound here. So obviously the way that part of the loop was recorded, the filter was quite down, but I want it to sound a bit more brighter and pop a little bit more in the top end. So a really cool way to do this, if you're going to boost, because people always say cut. Like you say, you must cut all the time, don't boost. And I've seen it in loads of magazines and online and things like that. But I find boosting gives you really good results as well, because if you use like an EQ that's based on old analog hardware, then sometimes you can bring out some really nice kind of like tones and stuff out of it. Same on like a guitar cabinet, if you boost frequencies for the guitar sound, you're going to bring out certain raspiness and certain tones and things like that. And I feel the same way about these kind of EQs. So yeah, we're gonna play around with that, and we're gonna boost instead of like low shelving and cut in the bottom end, and see what sound we get to. So let's have a play around with this. So there you go, that kind of works for me. And you'll notice as well, like some people watching this might go, my God, it's like boosted at like 7 dB or 8 dB or whatever. But like I said, with these kind of plugins that are based on old hardware, you can get away with those kind of boosts. I find anyway, like you don't get the same digital artifacts that you would get with like a digital EQ. So this also works for like drums and stuff as well. So we've got a drum loop here. And it sounds great, it's perfectly balanced, but maybe you want the kind of like the toms to punch through a little bit better or something like that. Let's just play around and see if we can make them kind of come through a little bit more. Yeah, it's kind of like the 800 hertz, like bringing that up. You might want to add a little bit more top in there to give it a bit more fizz as well. So I'll listen to before and after. So one thing I will say is, obviously for this demonstration, I've done it with isolated sounds and loops, and I wouldn't do that. You know, like if you're bringing up a loop and then you're playing around with it before you've even made the full mix, I wouldn't tend to do it unless there was something that really needed adjusting, like we did on the first one with the tonal balance. I would tend to do this towards the end of the mix. So when you've got all your elements in, you've arranged your track, you're at that mixing stage, and you're getting really close to the end of the mix, and you're at, say, like 85-90% there. But you just want to kind of make things pop a little bit more, things pop out the mix. The set, like let's say if you've got a clap and snare and you're feeling like it's just not got that kind of punch going through, but let's say you've come to a point where you've used the loop or you've printed out the whole bus, so you can't go in and just raise the clap sound, or you might find that the clap sound, it's got a low end which is sitting right, but the top end is just not cutting through. On the drum bus, you might just go to the 2K area and just make that pop up by a dB or two. And I'm usually quite subtle with these kind of things as well. But yeah, you just go through and you kind of just like pull things down, boost things up, so you get like a nice even kind of balance across the mix. And like I said before, using emulations of old EQs and things like that is just a really great way to do it without adding unwanted artifacts. This next one is like a really useful tool which gets used by everyone all the time, and really important one too if you want like a nice strong master at the end of the mix. And this is to clear up any unwanted audio in the bottom end. And one thing I will say about this is sometimes it gets overdone, and I used to do it so much, like I used to just high pass everything to the point where my hats were high passed all the way up to 1K and stuff like that. And at the time you might do it and think, oh, that's a really, really good idea. I don't need all that kind of content at the bottom. So then I might end up with like a louder mix and stuff like that. But you do want some of that in. You want to keep that kind of low end rumble and dirt and grit in there, because that's what's going to make your mixes sound more lifelike, more real. And if you, like I said, if you do it the other way, if you kind of high pass everything too much, you're going to end up with like a really, really thin mix. You're going to end up with a clean mix, but it's going to be super thin and it's not going to have that grit that you want. So let's go ahead and do this on these two sounds. So this first one is this sound here. And we're going to get rid of that low end rumble there, but we don't want to go too high because the start of the frequency or the fundamental is kind of around 80 hertz. So let's just bring it in a little bit. I kind of just do it to a point where I feel like if I went any further, or you can hear it, if I go any further, it's going to take too much away from the original sound. In some cases, you might have a lot of other stuff going on down here, so you might have a kick and a sub and things like that, and you might actually want to get rid of a lot of that, so you might boost a lot, you might cut a lot of that out. And let's go on to the next sound. So with this sound here, we've got a lot of rumble in here which we can get rid of. around there kind of works for me. But as an example, this is what I used to do. I used to boost all, I mean, I used to run the high pass filter all the way up like this. And then you're just going to end up with that like super thin sounding mix, which is not what you want really. So yeah, I'd say around like 120 Hz will do. And yeah, you just go across the whole mix and kind of like look at your sounds and just see which areas you can clean up. Because as I mentioned before, if you've got a lot of content across the mix in that area, it's going to eat up the headroom, because most of the headroom gets eaten up by the low end. And you just want the main elements that are taking up that space to sit in that area, which is like your kick and your sub, and the bass and things like that. So if you've got like a lot of percussion that's got a lot of rumble that you can't hear, but it's visually on the graph it's taking it up, that is going to eat up the headroom. So yeah, you want to get rid of a lot of that stuff. So there's 5 examples of when you would turn to an EQ, and those are 5 key examples which I use a lot in my own mixes. Next, I'd like to know, is there anything that I've not covered? Have you got any questions about some of the techniques that were used? Have you got favorite EQs or favorite techniques that you like to use when messing around with EQs and working on the tonal balance of the mix? Have you got any tools that you use on the master channel for visual representation to help you mix better? Please let us know in the comments below, and I really look forward to checking those out. Thank you very much.